Start.
Okay, see, our second unit is information processing in learning and memory. So in this whole unit, we are going to learn what is information processing, what is this learning is, what is memory is, everything we are learning in this whole unit. Our brains are really complicated. So scientists have come up with models to represent how our brain takes and makes sense of information in our environment. One of the most influential model is the information processing model, which proposes that our brains are similar to computers. That is, taking input from environment, then processing it, and decisions are coming in form of output. And this information processing model, it is a basis for the interaction of memory and learning. Learning and memory are closely related concepts. That is, learning is acquisition of skill or knowledge, while memory is expression of what you have acquired. First, let's see what learning is. Learning is acquiring new knowledge, behaviors, skills, values, or understanding, and may involve synthesizing and processing different types of information. In 1956, Benjamin Bloom has suggested 3 domains of learning. One is cognitive, second one psychomotor, and third one affective. The first one is cognitive, which is also known as thinking domain. It involves skills that relate to the intellectual processes. For example, calculation, problem solving, etc. Second one, psychomotor, that is also known as doing domain, which is related with physical activities. For example, changing a car tire, swimming, dancing, riding a bike, throwing a ball, etc. Third one, affective. It is also known as the feeling domain. It involves skills that reflect on how the individual feels about a given topic or idea. Like to love someone, appreciate the effort of others, fear on particular thing, etc. These 3 domains are not mutually exclusive. We have a very good example in our textbook, that is a person who is very new to chess. The first thing he will do is he will learn the rule of the game. That is cognitive domain. Next, he will learn how to place the chess pieces on chessboard. That is psychomotor. And finally, the person will start loving the game, value its application in life, and appreciate its history. That is the affective domain. So that's all about Bloom's domain of learning in this chapter. Next, we can go through memory part. Memory is essential to all learning because it lets you store and retrieve the information that you learn. Memory is the faculty of the brain by which data or information is encoded, stored, and retrieved when needed. It is the retention of information over time for the purpose of influencing future action. Memory is often understood as informational processing system with explicit and implicit functioning that is usually divided into 3 storage systems. First one, sensory processor or sensory memory. Second one, short-term or working memory. And third one is long-term memory. And this multi-store model of memory is also known as modal model, which was proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin in 1968 and is a structural model. Information passes from store to store in a linear way and has been described as an information processing model, like a computer with an input, process, and output. So the information is detected by the sense organs and enters the sensory memory. If attended to this, information enters the short-term memory. Information from the short-term memory is transferred to the long-term memory only if that information is rehearsed or repeated. If the repetition does not occur, then information is forgotten and lost from short-term memory through the processes of displacement or decay. Now let us go through each storage system one by one in detail. First one is sensory memory or sensory processor. During every moment of your existence, your senses are constantly taking in an enormous amount of information about what you see, feel, smell, hear, and taste. In some instances, this information may be transferred to short-term memory. But in majority of cases, this information is quickly lost. There is simply no way to remember each and every detail about what you experience at every moment. Instead, your sensory memory creates something of a quick snapshot of the world around, allowing you to briefly focus your attention on relevant details. As brain only understand electrical stimulation, the body has special sensory receptor cells that transduce this external energy to something that brain can understand. In the process of transduction, a memory is created. Iconic memory, echoic memory, and haptic memory are three different types of sensory memory which have slightly different duration. Iconic memory is also known as visual sensory memory. This type of sensory memory typically lasts for about 1/4 to 1/2 of a second. For example, while watching a scary movie, all of a sudden an image flashes across the screen of a frightening girl in makeup. The audience of the movie stores the image that flashed across the screen as iconic memory. Next is echoic memory. Echoic memory. Hello, I'm audible?
Yes, Naseema, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, next is echoic memory. Echoic memory is also known as auditory sensory memory. And as the name indicates, memory of sound a bit like an echo. This type of sensory memory can last up to 3 to 4 seconds. For example, now when I am speaking, your echoic memory retains each individual syllable. Your brain recognizes words by connecting each syllable to the previous one. Each word is also stored in echoic memory, which allows your brain to understand a full sentence. Next one is haptic memory. It is also known as tactile memory. Involves very brief memory of a touch. It lasts for approximately 2 seconds. For example, when deciding whether a banana is ripe or whether a cake is baked, what we usually do is we just touch and see because we know how it should be, right? Here, what we are probably not aware is that we are reactivating memories of things that we have touched before. All these sensory memory plays a critical role in the attention of memory processes. Now let's see what short-term memory is. After entering the sensory memory, information is passed into short-term memory through the process of attention. That is, cognitive process of selectively concentrating on one aspect of the environment while ignoring other things. Short-term memory is the capacity for holding but not manipulating a small amount of information in mind in an active, readily available state for a short period of time. For example, those OTPs that we normally remember to type in some place. Short-term memory has three key aspects. One is its limited capacity. That is only about 7 items can be stored at a time. Second one, limited duration. That is, storage is very fragile and information can be lost with distraction or passage of time. That is, items last from 3 to 20 seconds. Third one is encoding. That is, it is primarily acoustic. That is, even translating visual information into sounds. While learning this short-term memory, it is very important for us to know about Miller's magic number. George A. Miller, he was an American psychologist. In 1956, he decided to conduct an experiment to find how much amount of information a person can store in his short-term memory. So what he did is, for a group of people, he shown them a set of many numbers. Okay. After few seconds, what he did is, he took back all those numbers and asked this individual to recall the numbers. So what Miller found out is that the number of items most of the individual remember is in between 5 and 9. That is, some remember 6 items, some 8, 7, some 5, like that. Anyways, it comes between 5 and 9. So what he concluded is that he concluded it as 7 items as an average of 5 and 9. That's how 7 become the magic number of Miller. 7 is the approximate number of data an individual can store in his short-term memory. It can also be 7 plus or minus 2 as well. Next, moving to long-term memory. It is relatively permanent storage. It is the storage of information for a long time, as the name indicates. Our conscious mind may not be aware of the information stored in long-term memory, but this information can be recalled with ease and accuracy. A good example is, most of us still remember those bicycle riding skills that we learned in childhood, right? Things like this will easily become part of long-term memory, while others may need continuous practice to be stored for a long time. Anyways, everything varies from person to person. Like some people can remember complex things with little or no difficulty. But on the other hand, some people struggle in remembering even their daily life information. Long-term memory is mainly divided into two, explicit memory and implicit memory. Explicit memory, which otherwise known as declarative memory, usually refers to all the memories and information that can be evoked consciously. It is further divided into two types, episodic and semantic memory. Episodic memory is the collection of past personal experience that occurred at particular times and places. For example, your graduation day, your first international trip, like that. Next one is semantic memory. It refers to general world knowledge that we have accumulated throughout our lives. Knowing cricket is a sport is an example for semantic memory. Moving to implicit memory. This memory is referred as unconscious memory or automatic memory. Things that people don't purposefully try to remember are stored in implicit memory. It is a non-declarative memory since you are not able to consciously bring it into awareness. One of the good example is riding a bike after long years without riding one in meantime. Most people are able to ride it effortlessly. And now this implicit memory is further divided into two, procedural and emotional conditioning. The example I just said, riding a bike, it is an example for procedural memory. That is, it is a long-term memory involving how to perform different action and skills. Cooking is another good example for this. Next is emotional memory. As name indicates, the memory relating to your emotions are stored here. For example, a certain date may trigger an emotional memory, such as anniversary of a loss, or while passed through a perfume counter, that smell will recall a particular person, like that. So that's all about long-term memory. Next part is cognitive information processing. First, let's see what information processing is. Information processing is the change of information in any manner detectable by an observer. Information processing is an approach to the goal of understanding human thinking. The development of computer in the 1950s and 60s had an important influence on psychology and was in part responsible for the cognitive approach becoming the dominant approach in modern psychology. Cognitive psychology sees the individual as a processor of information in much the same way that a computer takes in information and follows a program to produce an output. It is a broad field to the study of mind holistically. This is not one single theory, but a generic term used to describe all the perspectives that focus how our cognitive processes such as attention, perception, encoding, storage, and retrieval of knowledge. There are lots of researchers and psychologists around the world who published the theories and research. Some agrees to others and some criticize, but cognitive psychology has some basic principle that all those psychologists agrees and apply on their researches. There are mainly four basic principles, and it was put forwarded by Hute in 2000, which most of the cognitive psychologists assume while doing their research work. And first one is limited capacity of mental system. That means human mind can process only a limited number of information at a time. Here in book, we have a good example to compare that. That is a bottle neck. How much ever be the size of the bottle, the water coming out through is limited to the neck size. Second one is a controlled mechanism is required to oversee the encoding, transformation, processing, storage, retrieval, and utilization of information. For example, if a person is cooking for the first time, he will be so confused how much salt to put, how much water to pour, what are masalas to be added, volume of flame, etc., etc. He will feel like his whole mind is processing for it, where an expert cook have no such tension. He will do everything automatically. So what it's saying here is, when you are learning a new task or stuck in a new environment, the executive function requires more processing power than when one is doing a routine task or is in a familiar environment. Third principle is that there is a two-way flow of information as we try to make sense of world around us. Sensory input is combined with information stored in memory in order to construct meaning. A bottom-up system is predicted on belief that new information is seen as initiator, which the brain attempts to match with the existing concepts in order to break down characteristics or defining attributes. An opposite approach is also there, that is top-bottom system, where the existing information is the initiator, that is the past experience, and the memory representation are evaluated, then matched to stimuli. So in short, bottom-up processing is information we gather through our senses. Top-down processing means information which is already stored in memory. Fourth principle is that human organism has genetically prepared to process and organize information in specific ways. That is, whichever part of the world you were born, there are some common things that all the person have despite of culture, environment, etc. For example, a human infant is more likely to look at a human face than any other stimulus. All the newborn, the first thing that they do when they come out is they'll cry, right? And the same way, when they will sit, when they crawl, stand, walk, run, etc. All these are same for all the babies. Approximately at same months, babies will do all these things. Slowly, their memories will develop, and based on the environment, there will be changes in their thought process. Next is information processing in learning and memory. One of the primary areas of cognition studied by researchers is memory. Here in textbook, we have 2-3 definition by some of the psychologists. I think you can read it by yourself. So I'm moving to next part, definitions and all you can read yourself. Next is cognitive information processing model of learning. That is CIP model. CIP model focus on our short-term memory, otherwise known as working memory. We all know that the capacity of working memory is limited. That is, we can focus only one thing at a time. So if we try to give more works to working memory, like trying to look so many things at a time or trying to learn too much of new things, so obviously it is a burden for our working memory. Both information processing and transferring information to long-term memory at a time will be for sure a burden for working memory. Not just that, retrieval of information from long-term memory whenever needed is also taken inside the working memory. So this amount of work imposed on working memory by a learning task is called cognitive load. Now, what is this CIP? Cognitive information processing model of learning presents a well-established paradigm of cognitive behavioral psychology. It is not a single theory, but a generic term used to describe all the perspectives that focus how our cognitive process, such as encoding, storage and retrieval of knowledge, and these three combinedly called as control system. Information processing is compared with a computer model by psychologists. Like the computer, human minds take in information, performs operation on it, stores the information, retrieves it when needed, and generates responses to it. Next is development of memory and information processing. Psychologist Neisser in 1967 defined cognition is the encoding, structuring, storing, retrieving, using or otherwise learning knowledge. Now let us learn each of this in detail. First one is encoding. Encoding means how we gather information and represent that information. This is the initial stage of control processing. Psychologist says encoding power of a person get improved according to their maturity and experience. Dempster suggests that adult capacity for short-term memory of 5 plus 2 digits might be as much as 2 digits lower for children aged 5 and 1 digit lower for children aged 9. Psychologist says this is the same difference for a new learner and expert. Compared to a new learner, encoding power of an expert is faster. Depression is mainly associated with the problem in the encoding of short-term memories. Depression and anxiety make it very difficult for a person to perceive and think clearly. Next thing is sleep deprivation that may affect encoding. Optimal sleep of 7 to 8 hours is recommended, which is necessary for the brain to work properly. Now let us see structuring and organizing. This means how a person processes the information and store it. Same as in the encoding, one's ability changes over time as a result of both maturation and experience. For example, a child who has not started his schooling won't have the habit of memorizing things. So once start schooling, they will slowly start practicing how to memorize things by repeating it again and again. Now the child become more competent in this and use this strategy frequently. Now let's see how organization of information is done. It means how certain informations are organized or categorized according to their similarities and difference. For example, carrot and beans categorized as vegetable, where mango and apple is fruit. By organizing information like this, it will be easy to retrieve later. One of the most important information processing capacity a child develops is the ability to organize information. Next one is storage and retrieval. Same like others, storage and retrieval capacity will also get better over time with experience and maturation. For example, a baby who is 7 months or less, if you keep a ball beside that baby, the memory regarding the ball is till you remove the ball from his view. But after 7 months, if you remove that ball from his view, still he will remember, yes, I have seen a ball. That is what called object permanence. Psychologist says when a child starts growing, his multitasking capacity also starts growing. By 13 months of age, infants can reproduce 3 act sequences. By 24 months, it increased to 5 act sequences, and by 30 months, it increased to 8 separate action. As children gain language skill, their ability to store and retrieve more complex events increases. Next is theories of information processing. It is the understanding of how the mind processes and stores information is invaluable to educators as they plan for instructions. If learning is to occur, educators must ensure that new information is processed in such a way that it can be retained in long-term memory. In order to achieve this, elaboration and connection must occur between previously learned memory and new information. And there are some important theories which explains information processing. One of the most often cited reference to the level of elaboration for instruction purpose is the taxonomy of cognitive domain developed by Benjamin Bloom. The Bloom's taxonomy of cognitive domain, Seema will take. So I am moving to Sternberg's information processing approach. That is the last and final thing in this unit. Robert Sternberg, he's an American psychologist. He created one of the most well-known theories of intelligence. Sternberg theory suggests that development is skill-based and continuous rather than staged and discontinuous as stage theorists believe. First and very importantly, Sternberg's model doesn't differentiate between child and adult learning. He deals solely with information processing aspect of development and does not incorporate any fact of biological development into his theory. According to Sternberg's theory, there are 3 basic mental processes that underlie all intelligent behavior. One is meta components, second one performance components, and third one knowledge acquisition. And all this comes under componential subtheory, which explains the mechanisms and structures that are the basis for all intelligent behavior. First one is meta component. Meta components are executive in nature. They guide the planning and decision making in reference to problem solving situation. Meta components are higher order mental process that determine which performance and learning components will be used as well as the sequence in which they will be used. Second one is performance components. They are referred to as lower order process, which are basic processes involved in intellectual activities. They are often specific to the type of problem being solved, and they follow the plan laid out by the meta components. Rather than simply identifying the option, they perform the function of weighing the merit and or consequences of action in comparison to other option. Third one is knowledge acquisition. These are also lower order of mental processes which help discover what knowledge and information are needed to solve the problems. I'll tell you an example. You may plan to read a book that involves meta components. When you grab a book off the shelf and actually read it, that involves performance components. If you learn new vocabulary words while reading, that involves acquisition components. According to Driscoll, this type is much more abstract and may or may not be directly related to a current problem solving task. Next is contextual subtheory. This suggests that intelligent behavior is directly related to the socio-cultural context where it occurs. Contextual subtheory shows the connection between the behavior itself and the task, problem, or situation which the behavior takes place. In short, learners' level of experience plays a vital role. According to psychologist Kersley, contextual subtheory specifies that intelligent behavior is defined by the socio-cultural context in which it takes place and involves adaptation of environment, selection of better environments, and shaping of the present environment. So what it suggests is an individual social interaction has some impact on cognitive development. That is, new information can be matched with, compared to, contrasted to, joined with, or modified to fit with the existing structures. So that's all in this unit 2. Thank you.
Nasima, what was that? Contextual subtheory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now is the Seema, sorry, carry on, Sunita. Sunita, carry on. I'm sorry.
We're talking about Sternberg's model, right?
Yeah.
So that is meta components, performance components, and contextual subtheory.
Third one is knowledge acquisition. That is, all those comes under comprehensial subtheory.
Okay, all this comes under that. Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Your voice is not clear, Sunita.
Yeah, thank you very much. I got it.
Okay.
Ritika, you can stop the recording, I think.
It's you who has to talk, right, about the Bloom's taxonomy?
No, I'm not taking it today. No, that's what I said. I'll be sending
Okay.
an audio separately, so I won't be talking.